Welcome back to another episode of the Fouls on the South podcast. Today we're breaking down the embarrassing loss Alabama just had to Florida, 177. Going to break down everything that happened in the game, kind of what went wrong, where Alabama goes from here this season and long term. And I'm also going to kind of spend some time a little bit talking about what led to Alabama's roster right now and how it got to the point where in these big physical matchups they seem to not even be able to hold their own at all. Okay, let's get into the breakdown of the game. Like I said, Alabama lost 100-77. In the previous podcast, I basically kind of broke down what I was expecting Alabama's game plan to look like, very similar to what we had seen Florida and Auburn, and what the game plan was for Auburn when they beat Florida a couple weeks ago. I expected to see Alabama to force Florida to take outside shots. They are actually the worst three-point shooting team in the conference. I believe Alabama had a major guard advantage, an edge there. And while I did know that Florida's 3, 4, and 5 positions are very, very good players, I thought we could do something similar to what Auburn did, and that was to, keep them out of the paint as much as we can, force them to take shots that they don't want to take right now. And also, I was honestly expecting us to have a lot better transition defense. Turnovers haven't really been a major problem for Alabama. This game, they were a massive problem and led to a lot of easy scores for Alabama, but none of that happened. I had predicted that I thought with the lineup with Chuck in there and all of our guys healthy, which we had, I thought it was going to be a good matchup for us across the board, and I could not have been more wrong. Absolutely, completely wrong. We were just dominated completely every position. So we kind of start with some of the stats, the things that really stand out. This team right now is just very, very soft. I talked about previously when it comes to constantly being hurt. The Tennessee game last week was frustrating because it felt, and I know we missed a couple. I mean, we were missing Amari Allen, we were missing Aiden Holloway, but I felt their injuries or team players constantly missing was a reflection of kind of the softness of this team, and also just in the game itself, the players who were available just felt like they were getting bullied and pushed around, and it was the reason we lost that game. So in this game, like I said, we needed to keep them out of the paint, and we did the polar opposite. We gave up 72 points in the paint. That is an SEC record, or at least I believe it is the most a team has scored on another SEC opponent in the paint in the last 20 years. Unbelievable. I mean, there is really zero excuse for that to ever have happened. It wasn't just simply their bigs just dominating within half-court offense. It started with our guards. I thought the guards were going to be Alabama's advantage. They were horrendous today. Outside of Aiden Holloway, Aiden was really good today. I thought pretty good today. He kind of consistently is our best player every time he's in the game. He never really has a bad game, which is a credit to him. But besides him having a decent offensive day, the rest of the guards are awful. They accounted for 12 of the 18 turnovers, which led to, I believe, 25 points. 25 points off turnovers. Florida also had 26 points just in fast breaks alone. They do an amazing job, Florida does, of forcing turnovers, like deflections, mainly from the guards, quick live ball transition turnovers. It's not necessarily just down low, but they make your guards make bad passes, make lazy passes, and as soon as that ball is deflected, there's always someone down there on the other end about to just yam it down your throat. And that's what they did a lot. They had 11 dunks in this game. Alabama had 1. Just the physicality, the aggressive nature that Florida has, Alabama has 0 of it. And to Florida's credit, it starts with just their elite players at the forward positions. Chinyalu absolutely dominated this game. He's the center for Florida. Obviously, there's a lot of off-court stuff that he's really just a really good player. I think probably one of the best players, and not the best player of the conference. But there was just a lot of off-court stuff that led to his fiery play today. Obviously Alabama doing what they did, bringing in Charles Bediako from the G League. Not a lot of coaches and other players are they're pretty pissed about that decision from Alabama. They feel like Alabama was very much just bending the rules, or I mean, that's a nice way to put it. They think Alabama just straight up breaking the rules to do this, having to get a judge who is very Alabama friendly to rule on this. Um, we'll kind of talk about what's kind of coming up with that in a minute, but genuinely dominated the game. He had 14 points, 17 rebounds. That is so just pure domination. He also had eight. He also had 8 steals. So he just completely dominated the game. We had no answer. There was probably the most memorable moment of the game itself was Aiden Terrell gets the ball down low, one-on-one at Chinaloo. He wants no business in trying to take him one-on-one because Sherrell can't dunk. It's a really big problem. He basically is he can kind of finesse at the rim, and he's good at it. But he didn't want to take Chinaloo one-on-one, which is what he needed to do in that possession. Instead, he passes it out to Phylon. Phylon, who had a bad game, by the way, can't get around Chinaloo. So we just got to watch this embarrassing segment for about 10 seconds of Phylon trying to dribble himself around Chinaloo. He ain't letting it happen. Then we give it to Trelly as if he's going to do better. Absolutely not. He didn't even get the shot off. Before there's a shot clock, he just travels, and there's a turnover on the possession. He completely dominated the game against us, and it was just pretty embarrassing to watch. The Alabama in the first half, I mean, you could tell they weren't going to win the game, but they were at least kind of hanging in there. I think it was 42-36 at one point. Alabama had a chance to kind of keep it closer, and then they kind of gave up a little bit of a run right there at the end of the first half. So Alabama was down, I believe, 10 at halftime. And so, I mean, they weren't winning the game, but you would just hope that they would at least be competitive in the second half. Instead, Florida comes out in the second half, and then it's over. Alabama is a no-show. Florida just dominates. I don't remember the time. I didn't really look at the stats like I normally do, and most people I know just turn the game off. I just, for the sake of this podcast, forced myself to watch the rest of it. It was embarrassing. Alabama their guards can't get around anybody. The Florida guards, who Alabama's guards are better players, or at least I thought, they could not get around them. And every pass seemed to be deflected. Every shot seemed to be blocked. I think Florida only ended up with like 5 blocks. It felt like 35. And every single time we had the ball, it felt like there was like 10 possessions in a row. We couldn't even get a shot off. We would just be dribbling, turn it over, pass, turn it over. And then in the meantime, Florida is just racing down on the other end with such aggression, such intensity, such passion. Like, they're pretty pissed about the stuff we've done off the court, and they're just dominating in that and just in every asset of the game. Looked like we couldn't even belong. It looked like something when you just were watching like a junior high team play a high school team or something like that. We couldn't even function. It was really embarrassing. It was probably the most embarrassing half of a basketball game I've ever seen Alabama play under Nate Oates. Betty Echo ended up fouling out, had like 6 points. And Chinaloo sitting there shooting free throws because Betty Echo fouled him out. Betty Echo fouled Chinaloo to foul out. And as he's walking back to the bench to sit down because he's been fouled out of the game, Chinaloo is pumping up the crowd. The crowd is going crazy, calling Betty Echo a G League dropout. Basically, a clown for the whole world to see on ABC. Absolutely embarrassing. Nate Oates decided before the game was started a couple of days ago to make a comment about how he believed the reason that the Florida Bigs were able to be so dominant is they kind of abused the 3-second violation rule on offense and rarely called for it. Well, they heard that and decided to just kill us. Not just beat us, but we're just going to go for our jugular every single play and just dominate the game from start to finish. And after the game, Todd Golding brought it up in his post game. He said he thought the Bigs played really well. He said 72 points in the paint. He felt that when they got the ball, it was 1 second, 2 second, and they scored, which is exactly what happened, and just pure embarrassment. Another big disappointing part of it was LeBaron. I really thought he had a chance to be a SEC Player of the Year. He's been the leading scorer this far. We're going to be a decent team down the stretch when it comes to standings, I hope. So I thought he would have a chance to be SEC Player of the Year, and I thought this game would be kind of that breakout game because I thought he had the advantage in the matchup. Well, he played awful. He was 5 of 13 from the field. ended up scoring like double digits because he kind of made some threes late. But he had 5 turnovers. That's the 5th time this season he's had 5 turnovers. That's a major problem. And his turnovers are just like lazy passes, and they're the worst kind of turnovers to have. It's not like he's dribbled off his foot and is going out of bounds. It's I tried to cross the court pass. Oh, Condon's got it, and Hal's down there. They're about to just windmill dunk it on us. Basically, that's what it was. It was all of his turnovers had to have led to points. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what it felt like. So at least in my mind, that was 5 turnovers, meant 10 points over there for at least for Florida. So just a really bad game from him. Kind of looking ahead for both teams, just kind of quick on their outlook of the season. Coming in, like Florida was very similar to Alabama in terms of most metrics and kind of NCAA tournament seeding predictions. And I think whatever happened in that Auburn game a couple weeks ago, it's a mind-boggling loss in my opinion at home to an Auburn team that's not really that good. Specifically, they're not a great defensive team, but they just dominated, or they really shut down Florida's offense in that game. I think that really woke that, plus all the outside noise surrounding this game for them really woke them up, and they look like they're kind of back to that national championship form. I don't know. I don't think they have the guards. I still don't think they have the guards to win a national championship, but before I didn't think SEC really had a Final Four contender. They are. They're up to 6 now in Ken Palm. I think it was in Bart Torvik, they're like 5. So they're right there on the cusp of they're based on their resume and kind of where they are. I don't know if they'll be able to climb all the way to a 2 seed, but they're going to probably play in like 1 by the end. I think they'll end up as a 3 seed. I really do. I think they're going to, looking at their schedule and just how they played, I just kind of think they're going to win out in conference play and probably win out in the SEC tournament too. So they look like they kind of rounded into form. They kind of know their identity. They're not a great shooting team, but it don't matter because they'll just pound it inside. And then they get a ton of transition points because they just force a ton of turnovers. I wish. Alabama now, we were down to 20 in Ken Palm. We just kind of keep slipping throughout the year. We were up. I can't remember at the highest we've been this season, but we just kind of constantly kind of slowly creeping down. Looking right now that our, best hope chance is one of the 4 seeds, but I don't even know if that's really, really realistic. 5 seeds kind of looking like what we're going to be like. Unless we kind of slip up and keep losing some games, then we might end up as a 6 seed. Looking right now, though, I think we'll end up as a 5 seed ultimately, and then we'll be one of the overwhelming picks for that 5-12 upset. And if you're not aware, like an NCAA tournament, one of the most popular upsets every year is the 12 seed and the 5 seeds. I think they have won one basically every single year, and a lot of times win 2. So I just feel like that's basically where Alabama's going to end up. It feels like this team right now is destined to lose a 5-12 matchup. But hopefully this is not the case. We get to the tournament and something changes, but we'll see. Okay, I want to talk a little bit now about just kind of how the roster got to the point that it's at right now, where they're really struggling in specifically that kind of power forward position, but just overall depth as a whole. There's really just not a lot of guys right now we can turn to in these kind of physical matchups. So Alabama last season was a really, really good team. Obviously, they're the 6th best team in the country. Unfortunately, 3 of the top 5 teams were also in the conference. So that is unfortunate. So we did not win the SEC regular season or the SEC tournament, but we get to the semis of the SEC tournament. Got smoked by Florida, of course, but we get to the semis. Then we go to the Elite 8, run into a better team, and Duke, and that was kind of it. But a really good season to kind of follow up the miracle Final Four run. We had a great year and made it back to the Elite 8, which is awesome. The offseason was just brutal for Alabama. We lost Cliff Amore because of eligibility, so we lost kind of our main lob and dunking threat. Aiden Sherrill did re-sign with Alabama, which is great. I think he's good. Then in the portal, we lose Darion Reed, Jaron Stevenson, and Mo Diabate. And at the time, especially like Darion, I hated to see go. Like when it happens in the moment, you are a little annoyed that they left. So you're like, oh, we'll be fine. We'll figure it out. And then same with Jaron Stevenson had struggled offensively for most of that season. So it was okay to see him go. But I think we were underestimating as fans the impact he's going to have. Just not having him would be when it comes to defense and the other intangibles that maybe you don't notice outside of points. So losing Mo, Jaren, and Darion meant that we basically had to go into the portal to get another center, and then also had to completely get the whole four position because we lost Grant and those three guys. We had Amari Allen come in as a freshman, so he could kind of be, a smaller forward. Then in the portal, we just completely whiffed. We got Noah Williamson, who's Patriot League Player of the Year, which just seems kind of funny to be our backup center. He's just not. He just can't. He doesn't belong in SEC basketball. He just doesn't. He's just not good enough to be there, skill wise, athletic wise. It's not his fault. He's just not there. We missed on that evaluation, so we can't play him. Which is what led to us bending the NCAA as much as we possibly can and creating all this drama to try to get Charles Bediako back on this team. That was the biggest driving factor of it. Obviously, we would take him, but it was a massive position of need. Similarly, so Aiden's also still starting alongside of him because we get Taylor Bull-Bowen out of the portal to be our starting four, basically, and he's just been a major disappointment. He supposedly is supposed to be a great offensive player. He hasn't been, and he's really struggled rebounding. He would have gotten smoked in the game today if he had played more, but he got hurt. So who's surprised? Anyways, and then we got Caden Bristow to kind of be his backup. He's basically been hurt the whole year, so just another whip there. So Bull-Bowen, Noah Williamson, and Caden Bristow just kind of have given us nothing. So that position, those two positions are just completely decimated by bad portal additions and injuries. And then Bethia, we thought was going to be another great guard addition, has not panned out that way. So when we talk about where do we want to go from here as a team, we talk about short term and long term. Short term is just this season and what we need to do this rest of this year. The SEC regular season championship is out the window. Those chances are over essentially. So what we need to be focusing on now is the SEC tournament, trying to win that, and then trying to get as far as we can in the NCAA tournament. And the way we play the rest of the year is important for those two things because seeding really matters in both of those tournaments. Now, there's a part of me that's really nervous that coming off an embarrassing loss, injuries have always been kind of nagging us. Things aren't going as well as we hoped. That in the rest of our games, we're just not going to have everybody's buy-in. And there's also a fear of mine that this week, this Thursday, will be the hearing for Charles Bediako, where the new judge now, gets to decide whether or not he is going to be with the team for the rest of the year or not. I think there's a decent chance maybe that he's not allowed on the team and the NCAA rules are upheld. And if that happens, that is just going to be a brutal swing for this team right now. The next two games Alabama has is home against A&M, who's number one in the conference right now, and we play at Auburn next weekend. The A&M game, I think Alabama should win. I think they're a better team. A&M is number one in the conference, but I do think it's mainly due to scheduling. But it's not going to be an easy game. But it's at home. Alabama just needs to take care of business and get that win. If not, we're going to be under 500 in conference play. That's not a good feeling, especially going into a road game at Auburn, which Alabama on paper is a better team than Auburn this year. But the way they're playing right now and the way Auburn's playing right now, I think the game will be really close. I think Auburn might win the close game. And also, if we don't have Bediako, then I really think there's a really good chance Auburn wins that game. So these next two games are really important for Alabama, and not just winning or losing, but how they're playing. I'm kind of, because we're going to make the NCAA tournament, we have a good enough resume, and the SEC tournament is what it is. I am more interested in how we're playing than just winning and losing. And if we can play with toughness, have good rebounding, play more sound defense, and then we lose a game at Auburn, that's unfortunate, obviously. I don't want that to happen, but that's kind of what I'm looking for in these next two games. There to be a collective team effort of increased defense and increased intensity all across the board. Also, with short term, it comes, like I mentioned, is the importance of our seeding in those tournaments. So in the SEC tournament, when you're just looking at the SEC right now, a lot of teams keep taking losses. I think just if you're going to power rank the teams, Alabama's still probably in that top 5, kind of near the bottom of that. But I do think when you kind of look at schedules, what we have the rest of the way, what other teams have the rest of the way, there is a slight chance we can maybe get up to that 3 seed in the conference, or more likely up to the 4 seed. And that's important for our chances to win the SEC tournament. The top 4 teams get the double bye, and the 3 seed even be better than the 4 seed, obviously, because you get to avoid who I think is going to be the 1 seed in Florida as long as possible. So either way, Alabama would really need to do their best the rest of the way to try to get one of those top 4 seeds, probably looking like the 4 seed if we get there, so we can get the double bye, which gives us just a much, much better chance to win the SEC tournament. Do I think we're going to do that? Probably not. Do I think we're going to win the SEC tournament? No. But then that's just how I feel right now. But I want us to be in the best position possible. Same with the NCAA tournament. Your odds of making the second weekend are just a lot better as a 4 and 5 seed, in my opinion, than as a 6 seed. Because as a 6 seed, you have to play an 11 seed, and then you have to play a 3 seed in the second round, which is just harder than playing a 4 or 5 seed. So the seeding really matters just for our chances to go far and to maybe get back to Elite Eight or back to a Final Four. Those two things aren't happening, by the way, but getting to the Sweet 16 would be, I think, a really good achievement for this team right now. That's kind of what I'm hoping for as my goal for the rest of the season, to see if we can somehow get back to the Sweet 16. Then we're probably just going to get killed by a 1 seed, but that's okay. This just is what it is. We just don't have a good enough team right now. Long term, we need to change a lot about this roster in the next year, not just the roster. I think we need to be looking at our defensive mentality as a whole, and maybe that includes adding a coach to the coaching staff, or maybe changing up how we do defensive coaching. We lost Charlie Henry a couple of years ago, who kind of ran the defense the first couple of years of Nate, which had really good defenses, top 3 defenses, and led to great success there. He left and became the head coach of Georgia Southern, and since losing him, we just haven't been the same on defense. I do think that obviously has to do with just players and personnel, but I do think that's something that probably needs to be looked at. Roster-wise, we're going to be probably watching kind of the NBA draft boards and what those are projecting kind of the rest of the way, because it will determine a few players whether they're going to be with us next year or not. Specifically, Philon and Amari Allen. I'll be interested to see where they're going to fall on those draft boards. If they're going to be first-round picks, they're more than likely going to go to the NBA, or I would say almost certainly they're going to go to the NBA. But if they look like they're going to fall into the second-round category, there's a decent chance we can get them back. There'll be obviously other offers they'll be competing with, but that's something we're going to have to be watching closely. Aiden Sherrill, I don't think he's going to be able to go pro just right now based off his game, but he is a talented big, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of offers from teams who are also missing that. So we're going to probably have to fend off those, but I would expect us to do that, try to get him back. Or at least I think we would need to do that. Aiden Holloway, I don't think he's going pro either, but we need him back. I expect him to be back. I kind of think he might be the star of this team once Philon leaves, which maybe not if Philon is back next year, but I kind of don't think that's going to happen. Besides those players, I also would like to see London Jemison back for a sophomore season. But besides those players, the whole entire roster is going to change outside of those 5 guys. So that's a lot of turnover. That's basically the entire bench is going to be all new players. And if Amari and Philon both leaves, that means we're returning 3 guys. Because Noah, we're not going to bring back Noah. We're not going to bring back Bristow. We're not going to bring back Taylor Bull-Bowen. I mean, we might, I guess, at this point. I don't know. There's a lot of things. I'm just curious to see actually how we handle it, just because we didn't do well in last portal class, and we're losing a lot of guys this year to draft in graduation. And Chuck will be for sure gone, even if he gets to stay this season. So there's just going to be a huge amount of turnover, and that's just going to be the big focal point of the offseason to make sure that we can get back to that top level. When you just look back on this years later, you're going to see Alabama went to the Final Four, to the Elite Eight, and maybe just a Sweet 16 or around a 32. And you'll be like, that's not that big of a deal. Like, every team kind of ebbs and flows. And that's true. In the grand scheme of things, this is not going to be a massive, massive failure. But I do think there are signs that we're not able to compete with the biggest of teams, the best of teams right now, as we maybe were a couple years ago. And so I think there just needs to be evaluation in how we attack our defense or adjust our defense, and we just need to do a lot better in the portal next year. And I do have concerns a little bit. I'm not great on knowing what the recruiting budget or the NIL budget is, but I do have concerns that there's just teams in the conference specifically who just have better ones, and they're going to be able to get guys that we are wanting, or take guys from our team that we were wanting to keep. So there's just the offseason is going to be interesting, and I'm a little nervous for it, but it's going to be a really important offseason for us to kind of get back to competing for the SEC championship next year. Something that we've not been able to achieve in 3 years now. So again, disappointing loss for Alabama. Just truly embarrassing performance. Not going to completely judge this team just off this game, because I do think Florida is an elite team right now. But this is an embarrassing performance, embarrassing for our players, embarrassing for our coaches, and I just looking forward to seeing how they respond this week against A&M.